The people you're chasing don't want you. And deep down, you already know this. You see the signs, you feel the distance, you recognize the patterns. But you refuse to accept reality because accepting it means facing something terrifying, that maybe you're going to be alone. So instead of walking away with dignity, you double down. You convince yourself that if you just give them more time, more patience, more chances, more of yourself, eventually they'll change their mind. But here's the brutal truth. People know within the first few conversations whether they want you in their life or not. Everything after that is either them being polite or you being delusional. And while you're wasting months or years trying to convince someone of your value, you're teaching yourself the most dangerous lesson possible, that your worth is negotiable, that love requires begging, that you have to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's life. You know what happens when you chase a cat. It runs. But the moment you sit down, mind your own business, that same cat walks right up to you. That's not just animal behavior. That's a universal principle operating in your life right now. Every single day, you're either pushing people away with your desperation or drawing them in with your peace. And most people never figure this out until they've wasted years of their life begging for attention from someone who was never meant to stay. Listen to me carefully. There's a crisis happening in our world today. And it's not economic. It's not political. It's identity. People have forgotten who they are. They wake up every morning checking their phones to see if someone validated their existence. They post pictures waiting for likes. They send messages waiting for replies. They change their entire personality hoping someone will finally notice them. And in the process of trying to become what someone else wants, they lose the very thing that made them valuable in the first place, themselves. You cannot force anyone to love you. You cannot manipulate someone into wanting you. You cannot perform your way into someone's heart. And the moment you try, you've already lost. Because the energy of force creates resistance. When you push, life pushes back. When you beg, you diminish. When you chase, you cheapen what you carry. This is not my opinion. This is a law. And laws don't care about your feelings. I watch people do this every day. They see someone they're attracted to, and immediately they start performing. The man changes his whole vocabulary, trying to sound smarter. The woman laughs at jokes that aren't funny, pretending to be someone she's not. They both start this exhausting dance of pretense, and then they wonder why the relationship falls apart 6 months later. It falls apart because it was built on a lie. You attracted them with a mask, and now you're tired of wearing it. Here's what nobody tells you. The exhaustion you feel in that relationship, that constant anxiety, that fear that they might leave if you show your real self, that's not love, that's imprisonment. You've locked yourself in a cage you built with your own hands, and you handed them the key. And now you're wondering why you feel trapped. But let me take you somewhere. There was this gardener, his name was Kofi, and he had the most magnificent garden you've ever seen. Flowers of every color, vegetables thriving, fruit trees heavy with harvest. People would come from villages away just to see what Kofi had created. But there was one plant that frustrated him to his core, a rose bush. He had planted it in the center of his garden, gave it the best soil, watered it twice a day, talked to it, prayed over it, put special fertilizer around it. Every single day he would check on this rose bush, waiting for it to bloom. But nothing. While every other plant in his garden flourished, this rose bush just sat there, green but stubborn, refusing to give him what he wanted. Kofi became obsessed. He read books about roses. He consulted other gardeners. He tried different techniques, different fertilizers, different watering schedules. The more he focused on that rose bush, the more frustrated he became. His wife watched him and finally said, "You're killing it with your attention." But Kofi didn't listen. He was determined to make that rose bloom. Then one day, Kofi got sick. Nothing serious, but enough that he couldn't work in his garden for 2 weeks. He was forced to rest. forced to let go of his obsession. When he finally recovered and went back to his garden, you know what he found? That rose bush was covered in the most beautiful blooms he'd ever seen. Deep red, perfect form, incredible fragrance. It had bloomed the moment he stopped forcing it. That's when Kofi understood something profound. The rose didn't need more attention. It needed him to leave it alone. All his obsessive care, all his constant checking, all his desperate attempts to force it to bloom were actually preventing what he wanted. The moment he stepped back, the moment he released his grip, nature did what nature does. Now bring that principle into your life. That person you're chasing, that relationship you're forcing, that attention you're begging for, your desperation is the very thing preventing what you want. You think you're showing them how much you care. You think if you just try harder, prove yourself more, they'll finally see your value. But you're doing the opposite. You're broadcasting your own doubt about your worth. You're telling them, I don't think I'm good enough, so I need to convince you. And here's the truth that will set you free. Anything you have to force is not yours. Any relationship you have to beg for is already over. Any person you have to convince to see your value will never appreciate it, because value doesn't negotiate. Value doesn't audition. Value simply exists. And those who recognize it will respond. Those who don't were never your audience in the first place. Think about gold for a moment. Gold doesn't chase miners. Gold doesn't send messages saying, hey, did you see me down here? I'm really valuable, I promise. Gold just sits in the earth, being gold. And miners will tear apart mountains to find it. That's the difference between price and worth. Price is what you charge when you're desperate. Worth is what you command when you know what you carry. Your problem is not that you haven't found the right person. Your problem is that you don't know your own value. And because you don't know it, you're negotiating it. You're giving discounts. You're having sales. Please love me. I'll change everything about myself. Please choose me. I'll be whoever you want. And every time you do that, your value drops. Not in reality. Your value is inherent, but in perception, in the way others see you and the way you see yourself. Now let me tell you something that's going to challenge everything you've been taught. Our society has lied to you. They told you that being alone is sad. They told you that if you're not in a relationship, something must be wrong with you. They told you that Friday night by yourself means you're missing out on life. And because you believe that lie, you've been running from the most important relationship you'll ever have, the one with yourself. There's a massive difference between being alone and being lonely. Lonely is a beggar. Alone is a king. Lonely scrolls through social media at midnight wondering why nobody invited them out. Alone turns off the phone and reads a book that changes their life. Lonely sends desperate text messages to people who don't deserve their energy. Alone builds something so magnificent that people start asking for the blueprint, you see. Lonely is empty and looking for someone to fill the void. Alone is full and sharing the overflow. The reason you keep attracting the wrong people is because you're afraid of your own company. You can't sit in a room by yourself for 2 hours without feeling anxious. You can't eat at a restaurant alone without feeling embarrassed. You can't go to sleep without someone's voice on the phone. And that fear, that desperate need to always have someone around, that's not connection, that's addiction. You're not looking for love. You're looking for a distraction from yourself. And here's what that addiction does to you. It makes you accept anything. It makes you tolerate disrespect because disrespect is better than being alone. It makes you stay in toxic situations because toxic is better than empty. It makes you compromise your standards, lower your expectations, and sacrifice your peace just to avoid the silence. But that silence you're running from, that's where your power lives. Let me take you to an ancient pottery workshop. There was a master potter there, one of the finest in the region, and people would pay large sums of money for his work. A young man named Chen came to apprentice under him, eager to learn, ambitious to create. On his first day, Chen expected the master to teach him techniques, to show him how to shape the clay, how to work the wheel. Instead, The master handed him a lump of clay and said, sit with this, don't shape it, don't mold it. Just hold it, feel it, understand it. Chand was confused. He didn't come there to hold clay, he came to make pottery, but he respected the master. So he sat down with the clay. An hour passed, then 2, then 3. Chand's mind was racing. He kept thinking, when are we going to start? When is he going to teach me something? But the master just worked on his own pieces, saying nothing. This went on for days. Every morning, Chand would arrive. The master would give him clay to sit with, no instructions, no techniques, just silence and clay. Chand started to get frustrated. He thought maybe the master didn't want to teach him. Maybe this was some kind of test he was failing. One evening, he couldn't take it anymore. He asked, Master, when will you teach me to create pottery? I've been sitting with clay for a week and done nothing. The master stopped his work, looked at Chen with eyes that held decades of wisdom, and said something that changed everything. You cannot shape anything until you can be still. You cannot create anything of value until you understand silence. Every young potter comes here wanting to make, wanting to do, wanting to produce. But pottery is not about force, it's about understanding. The clay will tell you what it wants to become, but only if you're quiet enough to listen. And if you cannot sit alone with clay, how will you ever sit alone with yourself? How will you ever create anything authentic if you don't know who you are in the silence? That moment broke something open in Chen. He realized he had been running his whole life, running from discomfort, running from stillness, running from himself. The next day when he sat with the clay, something was different. He wasn't trying to do anything. He wasn't waiting for something to happen. He was just present. And in that presence, he began to feel the clay differently. He began to understand its texture, its moisture, its possibilities. When he finally put his hands on the wheel weeks later, the pottery that emerged was exceptional because it came from a place of understanding, not force. Your life is that clay. Your relationships are that wheel. And you keep trying to shape everything before you've learned to be still. You keep trying to create connections before you've connected with yourself. You keep trying to build partnerships before you've built your own foundation. And then you wonder why everything keeps falling apart. Silence is not your enemy, it's your teacher. Solitude is not punishment, it's preparation. Every seed must be buried in darkness before it can grow. Every diamond forms under pressure in the depths where no one can see. Every masterpiece is created in the private studio before it's displayed in the public gallery. Your alone time is not wasted time, it's development time. Think about what happens when a seed is planted. It goes into the ground, surrounded by dirt, covered in darkness, completely alone. If that seed could think, it might panic. Where is everybody? Why am I buried? Why can't I see the sun? But something powerful is happening in that darkness. Roots are forming, structure is building, foundation is being established. And when that seed finally breaks through the soil, it doesn't come up weak and desperate, it comes up strong because it did the work nobody saw. That's what your alone seasons are for. This is when you build your root system. This is when you develop your character. This is when you figure out what you actually believe, what you actually want, what you actually value, not what your friends think, not what social media says, not what your family expects, what you know to be true when nobody else is in the room. But most people can't handle that. They rush out of the soil before they've grown roots. They seek the spotlight before they've built substance. And then they wonder why they keep falling over when the wind blows. Part 3. The force paradox. Here's something you need to understand about the universe. It has laws, and those laws don't bend for your emotions. One of the most fundamental laws is this: for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. When you push against a wall, the wall pushes back with the exact same force. When you squeeze sand in your fist, it slips through your fingers. When you chase love, it runs. This is not poetry. This is physics applied to your relationships. Every time you force something, you create resistance. Every time you beg, you create distance. Every time you try to manipulate someone into wanting you, you guarantee they never will. And the tragedy is that most people spend their entire lives pushing against doors that would have opened if they had just stepped back. I want you to think about magnets for a moment. When you try to force the wrong ends together, what happens? They repel. You can push as hard as you want, use all your strength, but those magnets will not connect. That's you trying to force someone to love you. You can text them 100 times, you can show up at their workplace, you can change everything about yourself. But if the polarity is wrong, if the alignment isn't there, no amount of force will make it work. And here's what's worse. While you're exhausting yourself trying to force something that isn't meant to be, you're missing the connections that would happen naturally. The most painful thing I see is people destroying their dignity trying to hold on to someone who's already let go. They see the signs, they feel the distance, they know in their heart it's over. But they refuse to accept it, so they start performing, they start doing more, giving more, trying harder. And with every desperate attempt, they lose a piece of themselves. By the time that person finally walks away completely, there's nothing left. You gave away your self-respect for someone who never asked for it and didn't want it. Let me tell you about a river. There was a powerful river flowing through a valley, and in its path stood an enormous boulder. This boulder had been there for centuries, unmovable, massive, right in the center of where the river wanted to flow. When the river first encountered this boulder, it tried to force its way through. Water crashed against stone with tremendous force, creating noise and chaos, but the boulder didn't budge. Day after day, the river exhausted itself trying to move what couldn't be moved. Other streams would pass by and say, "Why don't you just go around?" But the river was stubborn. "This is my path. This boulder has no right to be here. I will move it." So the river kept forcing, kept pushing, kept fighting, and nothing changed. The boulder remained exactly where it was, and the river remained frustrated. Then something shifted. Maybe the river got tired. Maybe it got wise. But it stopped forcing. Instead of crashing against the boulder with violence, the river simply flowed. It found the natural gaps, the spaces where water could move freely. It went around the boulder, above it, below it, and something remarkable happened. Without trying to move the boulder, the river began to shape it slowly, steadily. The constant gentle flow of water began to smooth the boulder's rough edges. Year after year, the patient flow created curves and grooves. The river didn't conquer the boulder through force. It transformed the entire landscape through persistent, peaceful flow. And here's the profound part. The river that finally flowed around the boulder created something more beautiful than if the boulder had never been there at all. The water cascading around the stone created patterns, sounds, an ecosystem. What the river thought was an obstacle became a feature of its journey. That's the principle you need to understand about relationships and life. When you stop forcing, when you stop fighting against what is, when you release your grip on what isn't meant to be yours, you find your natural path. And that natural path is always more beautiful than the one you were trying to force. You want to know why forcing doesn't work? Because authentic attraction cannot be manufactured. Think about it. You can't force someone to find you funny. You can tell jokes all day. But if there's no chemistry, they won't laugh genuinely. You can't force someone to desire you. You can dress differently, change your appearance. But you cannot create chemistry that doesn't exist. You can't force someone to respect you. You can demand it, you can fight for it. But respect only comes naturally or not at all. What you can control is this: your own wholeness, your own development, your own peace. And here's the mystery. When you focus on becoming whole instead of finding someone to complete you, you become magnetic, not because you're trying to attract anyone, but because wholeness has its own frequency. Complete people attract other complete people. Healed people attract other healed people. People who are comfortable in their own skin make others comfortable around them. But broken people trying to force connections with other broken people, that's not a relationship. That's a collision. Two empty cups cannot fill each other. Two drowning people cannot save each other. Two lost people cannot give each other direction. You end up in these situations where both people are desperately trying to get from each other what neither one has to give. And then you call it love. You call it passion. But it's just mutual desperation with a romantic soundtrack. I need you to hear this. The moment you release the need to be chosen, something powerful happens. You reclaim your power. See? When you're chasing someone, begging for their attention, waiting for their text message, you've given them all the power. Your mood depends on their response. Your worth depends on their validation. Your peace depends on their presence. You've made them your God, and you wonder why you feel so powerless. But the day you walk away, the day you say, I'm good either way, the day you stop auditioning for a role in someone else's life, that's the day you become free. And freedom is the most attractive thing in the world. Now we arrive at the most important part, and this is where everything changes. You cannot spend your whole life waiting for someone else to make you feel complete. You cannot put your life on hold, hoping that the right person will show up and suddenly everything will make sense. That's not how this works. Your life is happening right now. Not when you find someone, not when you get married, not when you finally feel loved, right now. And the question is, what are you building while you're alone? See, most people treat their single seasons like a waiting room. They sit there, bored, scrolling through their phone, watching other people's highlight reels, feeling sorry for themselves. They're not living, they're waiting to live. They think life begins when someone chooses them. So they don't invest in themselves, they don't develop skills, they don't pursue dreams, they don't build anything of substance. They just wait. And waiting is not a strategy, it's a waste. But wise people understand something different. They understand that the season of being alone is the most valuable season of your life. This is when you build your internal kingdom. This is when you become the person who deserves the life you're dreaming about. This is when you create something so magnificent that when the right person comes along, they're adding to abundance, not filling a void. What does that look like practically? It means you invest in yourself the way you would invest in someone you loved. You take yourself to dinner. You buy yourself the books that expand your mind. You take the courses that develop your skills. You travel to the places you've always wanted to see. You don't wait for someone to experience life with you. You experience life fully. And if someone shows up who can match your energy, wonderful. If not, you're still living a remarkable life. I watch people who've been alone for years and they're still the same person they were years ago. Same fears, same limitations, same complaints. They've learned nothing, grown nowhere, built nothing. And then they wonder why they keep attracting the same type of people, why they keep having the same problems. You cannot have a different outcome with the same level of development. You cannot attract a different quality of person when you haven't become a different quality of person yourself. Your alone time is your building time. This is when you get financially stable. This is when you heal from past trauma. This is when you read the books, learn the skills, develop the discipline. This is when you figure out what you're actually passionate about, not what sounds good on social media. This is when you build a life so full that a relationship becomes optional, not necessary. And here's what happens when you do this. You stop settling. When your life is already good, when you're already happy, when you're already fulfilled. You don't accept disrespect just to avoid being alone. You don't tolerate toxicity because your peace is more valuable. You don't compromise your standards because you're not desperate. You've built something, And you're not about to let just anyone destroy it. Think about someone who's built a beautiful home. They spent years designing it, constructing it, furnishing it. Every room reflects their taste, their values, their journey. Now, are they going to let just anyone walk through their door with muddy boots? Are they going to give a key to someone who doesn't respect what they've built? No. They're selective. They're protective. Not because they're arrogant, but because they understand value. That's what you need to become. You need to build yourself into someone so valuable that you become selective about who gets access to your life. Not from a place of pride, but from a place of wisdom. You've worked too hard on yourself to let someone who hasn't worked on themselves come in and create chaos. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you stop needing someone, the moment you're genuinely complete on your own, that's when healthy people start showing up. Because healthy people are not attracted to neediness. They're attracted to wholeness. Strong people are not looking for someone to save. They're looking for someone to build with. Quality people are not impressed by your desperation. They're impressed by your peace. You cannot receive what you're not ready for. You can pray for the right person all you want. But if you're still broken, still desperate, still don't know who you are, that right person would be the wrong person for you right now. You'd sabotage it. You'd ruin it with your insecurities. You'd destroy it with your neediness. The universe is not withholding what you want. It's preparing you for what you've asked for. So stop looking at your alone time as punishment. Stop seeing your single season as something to rush through. This is your preparation season. This is your development season. This is when you're being shaped into the person who can handle the level of relationship you've been praying for. You want a loyal partner? Are you loyal to yourself? You want someone who's financially responsible? You want someone who's emotionally mature? Have you done your own emotional work? Everything you want from someone else, you must first become yourself. That's the law. And when you become it, you won't have to chase it. You won't have to beg for it. You won't have to force anyone to see your value. Your value will be self-evident. Your peace will be attractive. Your wholeness will be magnetic. Let me tell you the final truth that will set you free. You were complete before anyone ever noticed you. You were valuable before anyone ever validated you. You were whole before anyone ever chose you. The person you're waiting for is not coming to complete you. They're coming to complement you. There's a massive difference. Complete means you need them to be whole, and they enhance what's already there. Stop giving people the power to determine your worth. Stop checking your phone every 5 minutes hoping for validation. Stop changing who you are trying to fit into someone else's preference. You are not an audition. You are not a contestant in someone else's competition. You are the prize. And the right person will recognize that without you having to convince them. This is your life. Stop waiting for permission to live it fully. Stop waiting for someone to make you happy. Stop waiting for the perfect relationship before you start building the perfect life. Build it now. Be complete now. Be whole now. And when someone shows up who recognizes what you've built, who respects who you've become, who adds to what you already have, that's when you'll understand why nothing else worked. Because everything else was preparation for that moment. You are enough right now, alone, complete, whole, valuable. You don't need anyone to validate that truth. You just need to believe it, live it, and protect it. That's not loneliness. That's liberation. That's not isolation. That's foundation. That's not waiting. That's preparation. And when you understand that, everything changes, not because someone finally chose you, but because you finally chose yourself.